Hey everyone, Tia Torres here with another episode of Wild Instincts. Okay, so the last we were here, I talked, actually, I just started the process of talking about, oh my God, get it together, Tia. I introduced to you how I started to learn to train these particular animals, but in a different setting than we were used to back in the US. You have to remember something. You know, back home, things were a little bit more on the controlled side. Even though we worked with the animals out in the open, we had to work them off leash because we couldn't be in the actual, shots when they're filming. But being in Sri Lanka, we definitely saw a difference in the way the animals acted because of the different smells, the different environment. We went from dry desert heat to very humid, hot, rainy, a lot of greenery, just like we were literally surrounded by jungle. And then, of course, the people were another thing. You know what? Now thinking back, I saw it rather quickly with my wolf dogs, but all the animals freaked out when they heard the people of Sri Lanka speak in their native language. Sinhalese is it's very quick and sharp and choppy and somewhat loud. So we saw a difference with the animals, and we had a very difficult time doing crowd control because, again, we were in this clearing in the jungle, but there were little villages around, and we did have security around there, but this is their home. We're kind of invading their space, so we could only keep them back a certain distance, but you could still hear them and see them. And so we did have some obstacles that, to kind of work around. But one of the most important things, actually there were a couple, but this was one of the most important things that I saw right away. And again, bringing this back over from the US, it was the way these animal trainers meshed with their particular animal. There was a true relationship. Now you have to remember something. This was years before, and I'm going to say it, I'm going to probably piss some people off. This was years before the Dog Whisperer came out, where he just flipped the dog training world on its head. It was all about dominance and being the alpha and forcing a dog to do something that they were, terrified of doing, and not even building that relationship. It was about getting quick results and whatever it took to get it. And with these particular animals, yeah, you can't do that. I think I said it before. You piss off a Bengal tiger, yeah, they're gonna let you know. So there was a true bonding experience. Add to that, they call them wild animals for a reason. And the reason I say that is because with dogs being domesticated animals, a lot of dogs you could hand off to somebody else and they're fine. They transfer, their personalities and their temperaments with them onto the next person. With these exotic animals, these wild animals, they're used to one person or maybe two. It's very difficult to quickly jump in. Like, I just couldn't jump in and say, hey, today I'm going to work the bear. It doesn't work like that. So it was really cool seeing the relationships being built and all the training. And I know this is an overused phrase, but I'm going to say it. All the training was very positive, but yet controlled and somewhat stern, like a mom would be, because along with being positive, you can't appear too weak for an animal that outweighs you by, 4 or 5 times. So you want to be his friend, but you also want to let him know, but you know what? You ain't going to push me around. So, so much to be learned. And I say this to this day, working on the Jungle Book in Sri Lanka was a crash course in handling animals and training, and made me what I am today. You know, between working with these exotic animals, between growing up around livestock, by the time I got to dogs, it was like, wow, you know, I've learned so much and I appreciate so much. So again, that relationship between handler and animal would come into play many times and have to be put to the test. So the last episode, I talked about learning what is called the mark. And that is a place of origin where the animal starts off or goes to and stays there. It's kind of like their little safety net. As long as I got my paw on this mark, whether it be a little piece of wood, a brick, a sandbag, something where they know they can put that foot there, their paw there, and that's where they're going to do what they have to do. So, story time. Story time. Oh my gosh. So I'm going to tell you a little story about how paying attention to the experts, you know, is really necessary, especially when you're talking about these type of animals. All right. We were doing a scene, and I'm going to be cutting around in this because there's so many things that went on. I'm just going to be picking out stories everywhere. We were doing a scene with Shadow. I think it was Shadow. He was one of the black leopards. And when I say leopard, they technically have black spots under their black coat. You can't see them from far away. I guess some people call them panthers, but they have black spots. You have to get really close to see them or look at them in the sun. So Shadow was one of the black leopards, and he was the more docile of the two. He was a good boy. I would say, without sounding too naive, he was about as close to having a dog cat that you could get, and still respecting that he is what he is, but he was pretty cool. And we were doing a scene where, because he plays the part of Bagheera in the book, he is on like a rock that overlooks a pond. And from what I remember it wasn't a huge pond, but it was big enough to swim in. You know, it was big. They had drained the water out. I mean, our boss, Brian, he was so thorough, drained it out, made sure there was nothing in there that could hurt him, put water back in, and put a portable filtration system in there. It was pretty amazing what they did to ensure the safety of their animals. I just remember it being blue. So I think they had like some coloring in the water. Actually, I have a picture of it somewhere that may have not got burnt up in the fire that I had back in California. Anyways, I'm rambling. All right. We're doing this scene. So Shadow is on a rock across the other side of the pond, and Brian is over there with him, keeping him on a stay, on his mark. So Brian, the scene calls for Bagheera, the character, to be up there on this rock and like looking at just like looking intensely at certain things, like, and then maybe over here and then across the pond. So he placed trainers, including myself, with Brandon, his nephew, who we're going to talk about him later. But I did introduce you to a little bit about him, Brandon McMillan, formerly of the Lucky Dog training series. And Brandon was new at this point. Brandon had been raised around these animals, but he didn't know a lot about training. So we were the two kind of newbies. There was a couple of us, and Brian had us go across the pond and sit up on like this, like another rock, and then other trainers to the left and to the right. And when he cued us, we were to make a noise. Nothing too abrupt, so not to spook Shadow, but he just wanted quick looks. And so he cued one trainer to the left, And that trainer like whistled, like a whistle. And then he cued the trainer to the right. And I forgot what that trainer did. It was nothing too harsh. It was just a noise. And then across to us, he pointed, and mind you, we're rolling camera. And he's holding Shadow on a mark. He's like, putting his hand up, like, stay, Shadow, stay. And I don't know what possessed Brandon to do this. Instead of just making an audio noise, like a or anything, a squeaky toy, he goes, Shadow. Well, Shadow knows his name like a dog. And he looked, and it was like the timing of Brian, our boss, like putting his hands to his head like, no. And Shadow looked up and went, here I come. And he jumped off that rock into the water. Leopards love water, as do tigers. And he's swimming across the pond to us. And I'm like, oh my God, we're going to get in so much trouble. So he jumped up, like I said, like a dog. Brandon got a hold of him on a leash. Because we have to carry leashes or catch ropes. And all you hear is cut. And then Brian goes into this insane time. What the F? And what the heck? And screaming at Brandon. And thank God Shadow was just like, dun, 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 dun. I didn't do it. Did I do good? And, the other trainers came over and got him. And of course, I'm getting screamed at because I was the one standing next to Brandon. I'm like, oh my God. So besides the point of how easy it was to get Shadow off his mark just by calling his name, what it taught me, because I remember this story forever, when I started doing training classes at all the LA City animal shelters back in 2000 and, oh my God, I don't even remember what year it was, 2001, I think. One of the first things I taught everybody was this: only use their name when you're trying to call your dog. You only use your dog's name when you want to call him. If it's life-threatening. These are like the reasons so when you're just basically training, like, let's say we are working with the dogs and your dog starts to get intensely having a stare down with another dog. Okay? That could be life-threatening. But more often than not, I'll do one of these. Just noises. I reserve the name for when I put them on a stay and do an A to B to come to me, a recall. And so it's something I just remember. I'm not saying across the board, to do that, but I've just seen it happen in dog training classes where you're trying to teach a dog to sit and a stay, and you go to walk away and you go, whatever, we're going to use my dog Lucky's name. You got your dog on a sit stay. You want to walk back 10 feet. As you're walking, instead of just saying, you stay, you go, Lucky, stay. Boom, he's popped off his mark and he's running towards you. So I always remember this. Yeah, I think that was the first of several times we got yelled at. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, I got plenty more of these coming. And I'm just looking at my list here. Oh my God, I got so many stories to tell y'all. But this was one that we had a lesson learned, right? We learned a lesson here. Okay, everybody. Well, y'all just stay wild as you can be, but always follow your instincts. Go with your gut. Follow your instincts. See you on the next one.